everybody. Good day. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Karen Bornarth, and I am Vice President of Industry Partnerships and Initiatives for Hot Bread Kitchen. And here with me today is a group of panelists who are committed to the idea that good jobs make good business sense. And in our audience are lots of different types of people, but many of them are owners and employers working in the food industry, representing businesses with anywhere from 200 to 300 workers. You all, the audience, you're from the US and beyond, and from the questions and information you pose while registering, it shows you share an interest in improving jobs within your own operations and that your concerns are ours. How to attract talent, how to retain your best people in ways that make economic sense and allow for the sustainable growth of your business. And that is what we are here to talk about today. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about Hot Bread Kitchen for those of you who may be new to the organization. Hot Bread Kitchen expands opportunities for professional, personal, and economic growth through our holistic job skills training, food entrepreneurship programs, and an ecosystem of support in New York City. We provide culinary skills training, job placement, and wraparound support to women of color and immigrant women looking to become, as we like to say, breadwinners in their families and communities. Through this work, since 2008, we have placed hundreds of our members in jobs with all types of food service and food production employers in New York City and beyond. In making these placements, we have found that not all jobs are created equal, which I'm sure everyone here knows. And that some employers, even with the best of intentions, struggle to offer the quality of jobs that we expect for our members. Being stuck in a bad job can take a psychic and a physical toll on the worker, as well as an economic one. And stuck is really the operative word. If one of our members works a job where her schedule changes from week to week, she may find it impossible to care for her children, to go to school, or even to look for another job. If her weekly wage is not guaranteed through a set number of hours, she may be living very much hand to mouth and on the exhausting wheel of public benefits. Future thinking becomes impossible in these situations. Professional and career development are out of the question. She is stuck navigating the day-to-day. And what so often happens is that workers in these circumstances will simply bounce from one bad job to another, building a spotty, unattractive resume along the way. Low job quality disproportionately affects the very people we support through our programs at Hot Bread Kitchen. They exacerbate social and economic inequities across race, ethnicity, and gender, while hindering economic growth and straining public budgets. This worsens occupational segregation and inequities in income, wealth, and benefits. Bad jobs are bad for economies, and they are bad for society. Bad jobs are also bad for business. One thing they lead to is constant turnover, which takes a real operational and financial toll on a business. The cost of a worker separation is estimated at 20% of their annual salary. In most cases, business owners and operators don't intend to offer bad jobs. When we think about food, we know that so many of our favorite food businesses are started by people who have a real love and talent for making something delicious, but who to really improve things, and that's where we can come in. Before we dive into the rest of our session today and hear from our panelists, I want to spend a couple minutes hearing from some of our members who recently spoke with us about what a good job means to them.
I love my job because it's giving a lot of opportunities to grow.
And friendly environment is very necessary for a workplace.
But that job built me in confidence. So, and I am learning something new every day.
When you feel appreciated, they say you thank you for all the work that you do.
So I think it is a giving and taking. The more a manager is giving, I think the more he's getting back to.
In my life, happiest day when I got first my check in dollar, and that check I sent my mom because I gonna give her my first money. So that is my very happiest day in my life.
Yeah, I wish a lot of people would have more understanding of, for example, language barriers we have, also cultural barriers we have.
Closing shift, opening shift as a leadership, I had to do mid shift. That's a little bit complicated with when you have kids.
That I am working part-time, so I have not getting the chance to explore more things or learning more things.
I think a good job is that you get to do what you're passionate about it, and you get also paid what you deserve for it.
There's a little advertisement at the end for the tamale house. I don't know if you all saw that. What you heard there is what our members, who are women who've been working in the food industry, in some cases among that group for many years, it's what they value in a job. But I think for most of us here, we would agree, no matter what our job is or what level we're working at, that we would value the same things like responsibility, recognition, opportunities to learn, and of course, fair wages. For an employer, particularly in a small business, it's not always easy to get there, to really provide those benefits to your workforce. Our Quality Jobs Initiative, which we launched this year, is meant to provide the knowledge, tools, and resources to support employers who believe that good jobs are good business in improving their jobs and business performance at the same time. Critical to note here, when we think about what we saw in that video, our members rarely speak about wages when they talk about job quality. In fact, I had a conversation recently with one member who's working in a bakery. She's been there for a few months, and she's very frustrated there. She finds it very disorganized. She doesn't have access to all the tools that she needs. And she was telling me that she would so gladly go back to the bakery she was working in before the pandemic started, if that were possible, and that she'd take a $2 an hour pay cut to do that. That's how much the quality of her job outside of those wages mean to her. And I think it's important to mention this because many employers, when we talk about job quality, they assume that that always means higher wages. And while we imagine and we believe that with the right business choices, employers can raise wages, it is not always necessary to start there. In our Quality Jobs Initiative, we are working with a cohort of 9 bakeries, all small businesses based in New York City, to identify the challenges and develop solutions for improving jobs. Through this work, we have the potential to improve the employment experience of approximately 500 workers and to improve these businesses' operations, sales, and margins. And here's how we'll do that. We will take an operational, business-minded approach to improving jobs and improving business performance at the same time. We will work directly with these business owners, operators, and their workers to implement a recipe for better jobs that has 3 key ingredients: strengthen operations, invest in people, and develop strong HR practices. Our work will not be theoretical or academic. It will be grounded in real-life businesses and real-world experiences. We'll hear from one of our cohort members today about why she's joined the initiative and what it will mean for her bakery. There is precedence for this type of work, and we have an experienced partner to help guide us. The Good Jobs Institute has done a lot of work in defining what makes a job a quality one, and we're working directly with businesses to improve jobs. They are working with us in this initiative, providing their expertise and experience and guiding frameworks. Good Jobs Institute was founded by an MIT business operations professor by the name of Zeynep Tan, who spent years researching the operational and people practices of low-cost retailers. Through that work, she was able to identify a set of practices that both strengthen the business's bottom line and provide for better jobs at the same time. Joining us today from the Good Jobs Institute is Job Quality Fellow Amanda Silver. Amanda now is going to dive into the Good Job strategy and talk a little bit about where it has been successfully used. So as we're talking today, I invite everyone to put their questions and comments in the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as time allows. And I want to welcome Amanda. If you want to come onto video. And we are very excited to hear what you have to say about the good job strategy. Do we have Amanda yet?
I think so. Thank you so
Great.
much, Karen.
Thank you, Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda. I'm a fellow at the Good Jobs Institute. We're a nonprofit based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and our mission is to help companies thrive by creating good jobs. We're so thrilled to be part of this webinar today because, as we just saw in that amazing video, food businesses are so essential to our communities and to the lives of so many workers. And these can be great jobs. These can be great jobs, but getting there can be challenging, especially if you're in what we call the vicious cycle. For those of you on the call who are running food businesses, you might be experiencing operational problems, things like food waste, stockouts, long wait times, cleanliness issues. These operational problems can eat into your sales and profits, which means you might cut your labor budget. And even if that cut helped you manage your costs in the short term, you start to see higher turnover, more absenteeism, less time for training, less time to take care of the customer, which drives more operational problems. It's a cycle that's bad for customers, bad for employees, and bad for businesses. And the assumption at the root of it all is that people are a cost. So one of the key insights of the good job strategy is that getting out of the vicious cycle, as Karen was saying, is not just solved with higher pay alone. It takes a combination of investments in people and operational choices. So as Karen said, our work is based on the research of Zeynep Ton, who's the co-founder of the Good Jobs Institute, an operations management professor at MIT Sloan School of Business. She wrote the Good Job Strategy back in 2014, looking at how low margin retailers like Costco and Quick Trip, a convenience store gas station chain, make a set of choices that enable them to create great jobs for their employees, great value for their customers, and great revenue and returns. So they invest in higher pay, career paths, training, but they also design the work differently, which helps them win with customers. So for the past 5 years, the Good Jobs Institute has been working directly with companies in retail and outside of retail, including restaurants and food businesses. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I'll give you a quick crash course, Cliff Notes version of the Good Job Strategy with some insights that we've learned from some of our restaurant partners and some other case studies. And along the way, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'd love to get to them for myself and the other panelists during the Q&A. So the first operational choice where most companies start is focus and simplify. When food businesses are not focused, it can drive operational problems. We worked with a restaurant a few years ago that had a huge menu, everything from sushi to burgers, which required over 200 ingredients, many of them specialty ingredients. Everything was prepped in-house, made to order. Customers had to wait in long lines. Food quality was often inconsistent. Managers were always running to the store to replace missing ingredients, so they couldn't be very productive. They couldn't be paid very well. The result was higher turnover, more food waste, and very few repeat customers. And complexity is not always just driven by the menu. It can also come from last-minute changes. So we've worked with several restaurants where the catering person would say yes to every catering order without really coordinating with the kitchen. So the store would find out about these catering orders last minute, which really disrupts regular order flow and inventory planning and creates a lot of instability. So good jobs companies know that being customer first doesn't mean giving customers everything that they want. They make hard trade-offs to be best at a few things. In-N-Out Burger, they want to be the best at high quality, low price burgers. So even when their competitors added chicken nuggets and yogurt, they kept their menu at around 15 items. Texas Roadhouse, their customer isn't coming in for lunch, so they choose to only offer dinner service on weekdays. With the customer first in mind, they can then relentlessly simplify their operations, which many of you have been doing because of the pandemic. We've seen restaurants take this chance to introduce more self-service stations like sauce dispensers, which means fewer prep steps, less interruptions. We've seen the Quality Job Initiative bakers reduce the amount of work for their teams by eliminating menu items, reducing custom work, closing dinner service, saying no to smaller wholesale customers so they can focus on larger ones. So a simple change like a smaller menu means fewer ingredients, so fewer disruptive deliveries. It's easier to train folks, more consistency, so you can have happier customers. And Your employees can really be experts in that smaller offering, so they can take more pride in their work, be more productive, which means you can pay them more. All of this drives lower turnover, lower costs, and higher sales. So the second operational choice, which these companies make, is standardize and empower, which sounds a bit like a contradiction, but I'll explain what we mean by that. Food businesses need standards. Recipes are the original standard operating procedure, but we often see food businesses that standardize to control, which can hurt customers and employees. One restaurant that we worked with had locations in commercial and residential neighborhoods, so very different traffic patterns, but they all had the same hours. Too many rigid processes, including distracting administrative tasks or out-of-date checklists, can get in the way of good service. And not enough empowerment means that your staff can't exercise judgment to take care of the customer or adapt to local conditions. Good jobs companies use standards so that workers don't have to use mental capacity for things that are routine. Things like batch sizes, kitchen organization standards, team huddles, training standards. Quick Trip, the convenience store gas station chain I mentioned earlier, has a standard that as soon as there are 3 customers in line, without any direction, the closest associate will open up another register, helping them embody their mantra of being clean, fast, and friendly. But in restaurants and bakeries, you can't have a standard for every interaction, which is why you need empowerment, which helps your teams create special experiences for your customers. We've worked with some companies who even have a make it right button on their point of sale system, that employees can use their judgment to take care of the customer within a certain dollar range. Empowerment is also about improving the work. Chick-fil-A trains their managers to identify opportunities to improve the flow of service and customer experience, and then they share those opportunities with other managers through a Facebook page. When a team realized that customers kept coming to them with the same problem of not being able to retroactively add their points to their app after they had placed an order, one of the teams came up with the idea to add instructions to the bottom of the receipt. So this saved time and it was better for customers. With both standards and empowerment, customers feel taken care of and receive consistent service. They might share their experience with their friends. Employees are encouraged to solve problems, which adds meaningfulness and achievement. And all of this improves productivity, sales, and leverages your staff to discover ways to lower costs. So you got a preview of this operational choice, but the third operational choice is to cross-train. Employees can respond to variability by changing their tasks with this mix of both specialization and flexibility. So employees don't have to be cross-trained to do everything, but a little bit can go a long way. We've been working with a restaurant that started to introduce cross-training, which meant that their front of house cashiers could do light prep work when there weren't that many customers, and their back of house could bring food out to customers when there was a long line at the register. All this adds flexibility and helps teams work together to provide great service. The last operational choice is to operate with slack. And this means that good jobs companies tend to err on the side of overstaffing, not understaffing. But this choice is last for a reason. It can be very expensive to add labor hours if you haven't already removed non-value add work with Focus and Simplify, or added flexibility with empowerment and cross-training. But without slack, you might find yourself in a firefighting environment. Managers are filling in on the line. It's hard to maintain high standards for cleanliness. You don't have time for coaching and training, let alone time for continuous improvement. And at the center of all the operational choices is to invest in people. Many of you, especially in New York and California who are on this call, have already been making investments in pay in order to keep up with the rising minimum wage and even just to keep up with your competitors. Pay will continue to be critical to attract and retain talent as you navigate this unstable world. But good jobs are also about more than pay. They're about meeting basic needs with stable and predictable scheduling, a commitment to internal promotion, safety and security. These good jobs companies invest in rigorous and respectful hiring, training that is thorough and evaluative, feedback and performance management, rewarding tenure with pay progression and recognition, building a high expectations environment. These investments, along with the operational choices, allow jobs to meet basic and higher needs, where employees feel their time is respected, they have the tools to shine in front of customers, and as those women in the Hot Bread Kitchen video were saying earlier, they feel confident, they feel appreciated, and they can take pride in their work. So when all of this comes together, you have a system of operational excellence where operational choices leverage people investment, and people investment enables that operational performance. And we've seen that companies can change because there is a strong business case. Companies that have implemented the Good Job strategy have seen financial improvements, less turnover, less waste, higher sales, labor productivity, competitive outcomes, more customer loyalty, the ability to adapt, and they're changing the lives of their staff by investing in their financial stability. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm incredibly excited to hear from the other panelists. If you're interested in learning more about the Good Job strategy, we offer free tools and case studies on our website, and please reach out if you'd like to connect.
Thanks so much, Amanda. Someone asked, or a couple of people asked in the chat if they could have the slides, and I said yes. I should have asked you first, but I will share my email at the end, and anyone who would like the slides or just to talk more about this work, you can email me and I'll be happy to send that out. I don't want to bombard everyone with emails of slides if they don't want them. But thank you so much, Amanda, for that brief but in-depth look at the Good Job strategy. And now we're going to dive into our panel discussion, which will include Amanda and some other folks. And I'm going to introduce everyone quickly because I want to get right into the subject matter. So if all of our panelists could turn their cameras on. And I'm going to welcome Kiki Louya first. She is the Executive Director of the Restaurant Workers Community Foundation, a chef and a former restaurant owner. If she looks familiar to you, it may be because you watched her on Top Chef 1 or 2 seasons ago. Kim Vallejo, who is Head of Operations and Business for She-Wolf Bakery, which is one of the bakeries in our inaugural Quality Jobs cohort. And Andrew Jacobson, who is co-founder of fast casual restaurant Dig, who's actually kind of a Good Jobs believer. Can I call you that, Andrew? And is going to talk a little bit about using the strategy within Dig's own operations. So to start, I have one specific question for each of our panelists. And Kim, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk a little bit why She-Wolf is a part of our first Quality Jobs Initiative cohort and what you hope the bakery will get out of the work?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, for having me here today. I will say, just on a quick personal note, I was super excited by this opportunity to get She-Wolf involved in this first cohort, in part because I've personally been a food worker for a very long time. I'm the daughter of food workers. And if we have not learned anything in these last 2 years, it is that essential workers are just that. They are critical to everything that we need in this day and age, and caring for them feels like more than just a personal calling. So thank you all for hosting this cohort and for asking us to participate. It felt really like a natural fit, I think, to bring She-Wolf into this first cohort. For those of you familiar with our bakery, we make beautiful sourdough bread. We're actually a part of a larger restaurant group that has a really long-standing commitment to caring for its workers and to pushing on sort of the boundaries of what good food jobs can look like. We have already instituted policies here that state that every single person in our company, whether you're part-time, whether you're a porter, all the way up to our chief of operations, have access to benefits. They have paid time off. They have 401k, they have subsidized healthcare. And that feels like a tremendous thing to say for food workers, but still, isn't quite pushing the envelope enough. I think we're really interested in thinking through how we can make our jobs better across the company, and in particular here within the bakery. We're also, just like from a timing wise perspective, our bakery has been around for a number of years at this point, and we're pretty successful. So we're asking some really important questions about growth. What does the future of She-Wolf look like? How do we think about expanding our operations? Is it expanding our product line? We have a lot of just like future focused questions that are kind of looming in the air right now. And so this cohort, particularly as an opportunity to speak with other bakeries about how we manage teams and plan operations and think about things like the quality of jobs, certainly retention, operational efficiencies, feels really important to us. So excited to be just amongst peers in that space. Something that we also think a lot about, and I imagine this will resonate to a lot of the folks on this call, is thinking about like the integrity of the work and how fulfilling the actual day-to-day is of working with your hands. We all work in food for a lot of reasons. There's sort of almost a spiritual calling to doing it, right? Like it is not glamorous work. It is hard on our bodies. We're on our feet all day. There is something well above and beyond the paycheck that compels us all to come to work every day. And how do we maintain that and support that and sort of fuel that within our staff so that they feel like they're a part of something that is bigger than themselves and want to continue to come to work every day. And beyond that, we're really just as a company, our entire restaurant group has been having a lot of conversations around equity and inclusiveness in all of the various companies. And so this also just seemed like, from a timing perspective, we've been really leading that charge internally to like dive into inclusivity, language, all the different ways that we can make more inclusive and diverse workforce or workspaces for people. And so to have that same conversation alongside some of this quality job stuff just felt like a really good fit for where we are right now. So thank you for the opportunity. We're so excited to be participating.
Thank you, Kim, for that really thoughtful and beautiful response. And we are thrilled to have She-Wolf Bakery as a part of the cohort. And I think it is, well, for everyone, I mean, it's a critical time. I mean, in some cases, some folks are still just focused on survival. But whether you're focused on survival or whether you're ready to grow, it's always the right time to really think about how good jobs can help you do both. But I want to turn to Kiki now for a second to look at a different part of the industry, which is restaurants, which in many cases may still really be focused on survival. The ongoing conditions of the pandemic have made it difficult, I think, for restaurants to recover to the degree that many bakeries have. And so, Kiki, my question to you is, why should quality jobs matter to restaurants, even in a moment when they may still be struggling with the pandemic?
Sure. So thank you again for having me participate in this. I think, I really want to uplift a few things that have actually already been said so early in the conversation. One of which, Amanda, during your presentation, you mentioned, which was that high turnover is really costly. And so I think a better question is actually, why shouldn't quality jobs be so important at this time, right? I think when so many restaurants are looking at their bottom line and trying to figure out how to really make ends meet, when you invest in people, you are really investing in your bottom line and your business. I also want to uplift something that you said, Karen, at the beginning of the call, which is that, quality jobs is more than just higher wages, although that is also a part of it, is being able to have a business that provides a fair wage. But there are other creative things that I've seen in the last couple of years, so over the pandemic, that a lot of restaurants have been adopting, and it's just because they don't really have the flexibility financially to be making monetary investments into their employees. But yet I've seen everything from restaurants doing sober weeks in solidarity with their sober employees. I've seen running clubs. I've seen restaurants that are letting employees do pop-ups on some of their off days, so Monday or Tuesday of the week, which is a way of saying, we are invested in your success as well. I've seen, restaurants also allow employees to come back after an extended stage somewhere else and have their job when they return. Continue education, either going to farms that they source from on field trips, doing things like whole animal butchery. There's a lot of creative ways that I think, we as restaurants can start thinking about how to provide a quality of life really to our employees and think of them beyond just the productivity, right? But also them as people. So absolutely, I think that this, if any moment, in our history, this is really the time to start thinking about how we can invest in each other.
Thank you. It's inspiring to hear all of those examples, and they really relate to something that we hear again and again from our members: learning. And they all want to learn new things. They are all eager to learn new things, and they don't necessarily need a raise and a promotion to do it. But Kiki, what you were saying also made me think, I think sometimes employers may assume, that their teams want certain benefits like a 401k or a health insurance plan, and that may not always be true. And it sounds like in the examples that you were giving in those cases that those employers are actually talking to the employees to find out what their interests are, and what their needs are, and then responding to that. Well, at the same time, I think maybe responding to the needs of their business, right? And really seeing where those two things intersect and how it can both benefit the worker and the business to provide that additional education and that training. So thank you, Kiki. That was really an inspiring set of examples. Andrew, I'm going to turn to you, and I want to hear from you about DIG. I mean, I know you've been very focused on implementing strategies to improve jobs and operations, and I'd love to hear how that's going and a little bit about why are you doing that? DIG is, as far as I can tell, pretty successful. Does it need to be more successful?
Well, thank you, Karen. And yeah, I'm really excited to be part of this group today. Just to reiterate a few things some of the other panelists have said, what Kim mentioned, sort of a personal calling really resonated with me. People start businesses for many different reasons and look at success many different ways. My orientation from my family has always been what you could potentially do for the individuals that work in your business and how you can improve their lives. And for better, probably for worse, I work in a space where the bar is really, really low, which is limited service restaurants. So I think you could do something that's pretty basic, and it's probably pretty easy to pat yourself on the back when you look around at those around you. But the reality is you're still nowhere close to what you would need to be to really, become a meaningful, supportive part of people's lives. So I just want to say that out of the gate that, yes, we're doing a lot of things. We're trying a lot of things, but I don't know that anyone is a beacon of what a good job looks like, honestly, in our space, and certainly not us yet. So it's just a constant process, and hopefully, all seas rise in this as we keep doing it. But to turn back to your question, I guess what might make sense, I was sort of reading all the people that have sort of joined us today, and hi to each of you, but it probably makes sense to explain what DIG is, and I'll do that really quickly. For those of you on a computer who can go to another window, if you don't know what DIG is, I was just trying this, maybe click DIG space NYC, enter that into Google and just click on the images while I you can get some pictures while I explain it. And I think the critical thing about our operating model is we did something that probably doesn't really make sense, in that we're set up like a quick service restaurant, like a burrito place or a salad place where you point and go down the line. But in contrast to them, we're doing a lot more cooking in the kitchen, a lot more value-added steps, a lot more ways things could go wrong along the way. So it's this mishmash of a few restaurant models. And as far as employees are concerned, we can't really do what everyone else does, or we're sort of going to fail. If we pay the same wages and we have a more complex job, obviously that's not going to work. So we've been forced from a very early stage, call it 5 to 10 years ago, just to think a little bit differently about our job and how we're going to attract talent and make it a good job for people. And that's where Good Jobs comes in, because if you do the same, if you pay the same as everyone else, we know we're going to lose. If we pay a few dollars more but don't address some of the challenges of working at a DIG, we're still probably lose. So pretty early on, even well before the pandemic, we've had to think about things a little differently and honestly create a good job, though I don't know that we had the language for it at the time. So just a few quick examples of that. One is, I think in contrast to our peers, part-time roles have never been a really big thing at DIG. And we do have part-timers. It's not to the exclusion, but because of the roles in our kitchens, it just seemed to make a lot more sense to have full-time hours for the bulk of our teams for the work they were doing. Handing a kitchen station off is very different than handing a cashier station off. And in terms of the level of training, the level of commitment, we've always been a really big proponent of full-time hours for most of the roles in our restaurants. And I think that is quite a bit different than many of our peers. So that's one part of it. And again, to your point, Karen, I do think with my orientation, making a better job for people was definitely a big driver, but there's also a business almost necessity to a lot of the things we've been doing on those fronts. And then the second thing, the pandemic really did give us some space because our restaurants were quite a bit slower than they had ever been to think about a bunch of different things. And we were able to launch a 4-day work week pilot for our hourly employees. And that's since expanded to a benefit we can now offer all of our employees in our restaurants where, it's a benefit, it's an option, it's not a requirement. But if they'd like to get their full-time hours in 4 days and work a little bit longer days instead of 5, we can support that. And that's been really cool to see the impact that's had on people's lives. Most of the stuff I read about for 4-day work week is office jobs. And I wonder, when you're behind for the week, what are you doing to catch up? If you're catching up, are you checking emails on your off day? In contrast, hourly workers at our restaurants, when they're off the clock, they're off the clock. They're not commuting. They're not doing any of the normal things they had to do. So it's been really cool to see what people have started to do with that change in their lives and that extra day where they don't have to come into work.
Can I ask you one follow-up question about that, Andrew, specifically? You said a second ago just the words business necessity. And I think your change to a 4-day work week was not just because you wanted a better experience for your workers. Can you talk about the business case for making that change and what it's allowed you to do?
That's a good one. That one probably falls more into the bucket of personal, what gets me excited and interested, because to be honest, the business case has not been proven out yet. We haven't seen the business results down the road that we'd like to. And there's been a lot of larger factors at play. So, we'd look at employee retention, employee turnover, and want to see a lot of improvement there. Haven't seen it yet. So the business case for us was really create some flexibility for employees in a way that doesn't hurt the business on this time, with the belief that you might be able to prove out the business case later, and you do it in a way in the short term that you're not hurting yourself. So more to come on that. Because we've just rolled this out, we'll have a ton more people on the 4-day work week really soon. And I think we'll, as some of the larger employment pressures in the industry start to be a little less wavy, be able to, sort through some of the noise and show some really cool benefits. So right now, the benefits are really all anecdotal versus a lot of hard data.
Well, that's great. I mean, the fact that you knew it wouldn't hurt the business, right? You can adopt a practice that will be a benefit to a lot of your workforce without assuming a lot of risk. And we're going to check back in with you in a year and see. I have a feeling you'll be able to make a business case then. Yeah.
From our initial pilots, we heard life-changing enough. And that's not something you throw around too much in our space when you talk about things you can do for employees. And we heard that enough that we wanted to put the carriage in front of the horse if we could, and get this thing moving and moving fast, and just not in a way that would hurt us. So we'll check back in for sure. Great.
For my next question, I'm going to turn back to Amanda. We'd love to hear a little bit more about what do you think are some of the specific challenges, and what are some of the specific opportunities of implementing the Good Job strategy in the food industry, and for small food businesses in particular, many of whom are in our audience today?
Thanks, Karen. So it's a great question. And I think I'll start by talking about why the Good Jobs Institute is drawn to this work in the first place. So our theory of change is to show that this model that we were speaking about earlier is both possible and profitable in as many industries and conditions as we can. Dig is a restaurant that is really changing exactly how we view food service. And She-Wolf, you are offering benefits to your employees, and that's just not the norm in bakeries. And Kiki, you've been talking about, the effect that turnover has on the restaurant industry. And I think that that's a message that we want more restaurants to understand and realize that they can have some agency over. So we've been working with restaurants, retailers, distribution centers, call centers, large public companies down to small family-run businesses. And we just know that there is so much opportunity for better jobs in food business. So go throw out a few numbers here, but there are around 11 million workers who are working in food businesses in the US. The median wage hourly wage for those workers is about $13.65 per hour, which is less than a subsistence wage in most geographies, which means you really can't take care of your family. You're going to suffer from other anxiety and stress, financial insecurity, and cooks, fast food workers, waiters, and waitresses are all in the top 5 occupations expected to grow the most and add the most jobs over the next 10 years. So there's a lot of low wage jobs, a lot of opportunity for change. And food businesses are community anchors. They contribute so much value. People shouldn't have to work 80 hours per week and still not be able to make ends meet. So we believe that food service jobs and all service jobs should be middle-class jobs. And when we talk about raising pay, this is one of the challenges for sure. And that doesn't mean that everyone needs to get a raise tomorrow. We might talk a little bit more about implementation in the Q&A, but from the companies that we've been working with, we've seen a lot of different approaches to raising pay. So Mudbay, they're a retailer that specializes in pet supplies on the West Coast. They raised wages 30% over 3 years. Sam's Club, they started by raising wages about $5 to $7 per hour from a base of 15 for their key roles. This is the baker, the butcher, the reason that members come to the store. So they could really just start with some stability in those key roles and then move everyone else up as it became more feasible. Quest Diagnostics, their call center, implemented the Good Job strategy, and they did so by also including pay progression in part of their compensation planning. So when you start at the organization, you have a base wage, but you're eligible for raises at the 3-month mark, 6-month mark, 9-month mark. Ways to really just value tenure and keep people committed to your organization and know that it's worth staying with you as they get more competent in their jobs. So just with any change, there are absolutely challenges. One of the main challenges that from our larger partners is actually a disconnect between headquarters and the front lines. So they just a lack of understanding of the front lines, lack of understanding of the work. With smaller businesses, your experience might be the opposite problem. You might be so close to the work that you don't always have time to think. But that's also what's exciting about our work with small businesses. So this means as a leader, you can make a commitment. You have less bureaucracy. You don't necessarily have to please your investors. You can really just, like Andrew was saying, you can not always have a business case right now, but you have the conviction and you're going to try it out because this is the direction that you think is going to build a better business for your employees and for your bottom line in the future. So the smallest business that we worked with is a 2-location restaurant chain who managed to raise wages and add benefits and is really diving into this work, and we're really excited about their progress. This person might actually be on this call, so hi. But that's really what a great leader can do, and we are really excited about being able to support more great leaders in this space who are interested in having that same sort of conviction for the benefit of their workers and for their businesses.
Thank you, Amanda. You know, when I think about small businesses and this initiative, it's improving jobs, improving the work experiences of these workers is critical, number one, because small businesses account for, I think, almost 50% of the workforce. And I think we'd like that to continue because it's our small independent food businesses that bring so much creativity and vibrancy to our communities. And I know, Amanda, you all work with a lot of big chains, but I think for me and probably for a lot of people here, that's not what we want to see filling our city streets. We want to see the she-wolves and the small businesses really survive. And in order to be competitive against the big folks, they need the tools and the knowledge to do it. I have, there's a great question in the chat, which I'm going to come to in a minute. But I have one kind of final question or a couple of final questions for the group. And anyone can jump in to answer. What specific steps are you taking or do you want to take to promote job quality in your business or organization or in the wider food industry? So people are working in different ways. Kiki is the executive director of kind of an advocacy and organizing body. And so you could talk about the work of that. But you know, what are the things that you've done already or you want to do, whether within your specific business or your organization, or ways you think that we could kind of spread this idea across the food industry? Who wants to jump in first? Kim.
Yeah, happy to jump in. I get excited talking about this stuff. So a couple of things that we have started doing already and hope to do a lot more of in the years ahead. One, on a small scale, it seems like a very minuscule thing, but we implemented some new scheduling software this year, which helped make the schedules more visible, readily available to all of our staff, and also gives them a little bit more control over setting their availability rather than just having to always update us. They're able to set some of that up independently and just own a little bit more that number of hours and days that they're available to us. And I think that has very immediately had a positive impact on both sides of our house. We have a market team and a bakery team, and they were using different schedules, which was confusing. Now they're all in one system, and that has felt really significant. Alongside that, we've also started implementing some cross training, which I think is really fantastic. Those of you in New York City who know She-Wolf, you know that in the early years, it was our bakers themselves who were out at market selling their bread. And we since have sort of moved away from that, where we now have a whole market team. But what we heard was that people kind of missed that. So we're bringing it back and allowing some of our bakers, particularly our junior level bakers who come in with less professional experience, and they're just looking to get a leg up in the industry and get some training. What we're able to now offer are, a split schedule where some of your days you'll be at market and some of your days you'll be in the bakery, so that you're really getting a sense of the customers that we're serving while you're building your skills as a bread baker. And we're offering the same vice versa to our market staff who might be interested in baking, inviting them in to help when we have, our big all hands on deck kind of days, getting them some experience and familiarity with that work. Something that we're looking to do in the immediate future in just the next couple of months is develop some more leadership opportunities for some of our longstanding staffers, folks that have been around for a long time and really know how the bakery works, making sure that they are recognized for their skills and abilities and compensated for it, and also elevated in terms of title, and just making a leadership track sort of more available to them, even if we don't have immediate senior management space for everybody. That we're trying to build in some infrastructure that does give people an opportunity to feel growth and feel development in their job. And then lastly, I'm really excited to dig into some stay interviews, because we are thinking about growth and want to really have a sense of what the team needs and wants in order to help us get to where we want to be in the next couple of years. So we'll be doing stay interviews with everybody, from our head baker down to our porter, making sure that we have a sense of what brings people to work every day and what changes we can make now to help retain them and keep them along for the journey that we're on.
That's so great. And I do want to point out, Kim, a lot of what you said actually is kind of in response to a question that Richard Hartman had asked, which is how can we create opportunities for people to create a career path and really reach their own goals? And I think we can do that even in small businesses. I think sometimes we have to recognize, though, that there's not a path. So all of the opportunities that we can give people to learn new skills through cross-training, which is, of course, a critical part of that good job strategy, it's a benefit to the business and it's a benefit to the worker. And sometimes the worker moves on, and that's okay. I think in many cases, both parties have gotten the best of the arrangement. Other thoughts, though, on things that you have done or want to do or seen done to improve job quality?
I'll chime in here a little bit. I think as a community foundation, obviously, one of our biggest roles is providing grants and financial support to nonprofits who are out here doing amazing work. But another part of what we do is really kind of create this resource network where we make restaurants more aware of the fact that there are actually a lot of free and low cost options for them, especially when it comes to, for example, employee mental health. All throughout the country, we work with a lot of different organizations that are providing, amazing support networks and support systems for employees who are struggling. There are even, within some of these nonprofits, there are checklists where you can go through every shift with employees who might not be feeling, so ready to work at that moment, and kind of see what's going on. There are also, there's racial justice toolkits. I know, Kim, you'd kind of mentioned, making sure that your employees are more aware of what diversity, equity, inclusion really means, how to be an inclusive environment, right? And there are nonprofits, Raise, for example, and also we've been in contact with Food Lab Detroit, who are working on racial justice toolkits for restaurants, right? To make sure that restaurateurs and chefs and owners really understand what that really means, that it's more than just kind of putting employees of color into these positions, but really creating a supportive environment to make sure that they have opportunities as well. So I think for us, it is both funding these programs that are really amazing in a bunch of our core focus areas, but then also making sure that restaurants are aware that they even exist. And, just kind of putting on my former, restaurateur hat, a lot of times you're just so focused on the work of what's going on in your individual space that it's really hard to find time to research on your own and try to figure out what's out there. So I think, for us to be that kind of resource, even just going to our website, you can see a lot of our grantees listed in all of the amazing programs that they offer is something that is really important to us.
Thanks, Kiki. And so much of what you described, I think, really came to be in the last couple of years. So, one happy side effect of the pandemic is that this awareness was brought to the table. And you didn't say the words mental health, but I think that's what you were really talking about, which is critical for everyone, but I think for restaurant workers in particular who really deal with a lot of stress and high pressure environments. And then anti-racism training for the industry at large, but for the restaurant industry around the tension of the tipped wage in particular. So wow, this went fast. There's a couple questions in the chat, and they are for Andrew and Dig. And the first one is, what is it about Dig? And you talked a little bit about your own personal interest, Andrew, but what is it about the company at large that makes it possible for you to do this work and develop good employment practices? And then there's a second very specific question about the 10-hour day, which I have that question too. That's a lot, being on your feet cooking for 10 hours. So how do you manage that?
Sure. I was thinking about the first one, and thank you. I wish I could thank you by name, Anonymous, for the compliment on the food. I don't really know the answer. I guess what I sort of come back to is I think at our core, we actually are mission driven, and it's about rebuilding the food system for us. And a lot of the things that sort of screwed up, we believe, with the food system is access, and access at all points of the food system. And that includes the people that work into it. So access to growth opportunities, access to a good job. And that's why I do think that, we're a New York restaurants centric New York business that's dealing with COVID. We are constrained in a lot of flexibility, but there's an appetite to try things when we can without hurting the business and hurting our chances of coming out on 2 feet from COVID. And then the second one, I actually was just typing an answer, and I think it went through. It did. Yeah, and I'll just summarize it really quickly. It's a trade-off, and although we found about 80 to 90% of our people take that benefit and that trade-off, for some people the 10-hour day just doesn't make sense, and that's totally cool. That's why we've evolved from something that we thought would be great for everybody when you're naive and you try a pilot, to something that's offered as a benefit and an option. And then there's another little more nuanced scheduling thing in there that I think people could just read if they're interested.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And as we're in the last few minutes of our session today, I just want to give a great big thanks to everyone, Amanda, Kim, Kiki, and Andrew, and to our audience today. If anyone in our audience would like to get more involved in this work, please send me an email. Margot, if you could put my email in the chat again, that would be wonderful. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'd love to talk about how we could work together to advance good jobs. Our shared interest in improving jobs in the food sector and in making our small businesses stronger is incredibly inspiring to me and to all of us at Hot Bread Kitchen. We believe that together and with the right tools, we can rebuild the food industry to be better, a place of healthier businesses, thriving workers, and happier, always hungry customers. So thank you today, everyone, and have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all.